Boom, you know the drill. New podcast. And of course, same old ad. Thanks once again to Anchor for sponsoring our podcast. They've just been great. They allow us to do this. If you don't know what it is, well, you really should. You should check out the other episodes. But basically, it's completely free. It's a podcasting app and website that allows you to create your own podcast, distribute it, earn money from it. It's really just wonderful piece of artwork, I would say. So yeah, go check out Anchor .fm or download the Anchor app. On with the episode. Thanks to Anchor. Welcome back to the Crickcast, episode 2. It's been a while. This episode, we will be talking about the effects of classism and racism and how it is damaging to mix those two terms up. We will be specifically talking about Mexico, and today we will be only 2 of 3 hosts, but let's get going. So, today, Huerta, what is
Hello.
our opinion on classism and racism in Mexico?
Well, in my opinion, it may seem a little uninformed since I wasn't the one making the research on this podcast right now. But my opinion on this topic is that it's a really, really big problem in Mexico, especially since the new presidency is just keep dividing and just making everything a lot worse for the classism in Mexico.
Yeah, I must say I agree. And as the one who was in charge of the research for this episode, well, I found some very interesting statistics. Many people here in Mexico usually call what we have as classism and not racism. They say that we aren't a racist country, but we can find that when we look at indigenous population, 39% of that indigenous population is in extreme poverty. 36.5% is in, well, close to extreme poverty, right on the line of extreme poverty. Well, just the national average is only at 11% of extreme poverty. So this kind of shows the difference in race and economic capabilities in our country. Anything to add, Huerta?
Well, but I personally see this as true. Well, I don't know if this information is true, but like the way you're saying it just seems true from like an outsider's point of view. It's just we live in a really terrible position right now in Mexico. Well, maybe not specifically us, since we now have like a lot of privileged positions, but there's a lot of people out here who really don't have what they need. And just the aspect of not only poverty, but classism, it's really starting to make a lot of damage in this culture.
Yes, I really do agree. And well, these statistics were come up from the conapred.org.mx. So it is an official site with official information, very reliable as it is a government source. And apart from this, well, the main question is how does the the vocabulary that we use impact the actual damage it has on society? So when you ask me, the impact of classism and racism, I think they go hand in hand. I don't know if you think the same, Huerta.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, like we've seen this in history a lot of times. Basically, Mexico has started ever since like we were conquered as a classist and racist society. Basically, back in the day, the clearer your skin and closer to the Spaniard view model, the more privileges you had. So it's really deep rooted into this country. So ever since, people with darker skin tones have been treated way more harshly than someone with lighter skin tone.
Yes, I agree. Not only is it historically shown that in Mexico, the way things work is that basically the lighter your skin is, the more opportunity you get. But the fact is also that vocabulary has an impact. And at the time, since we're talking about history, well, it used to be a system. It was politically just structured that way. So there was really no leeway for actual terminologies. But nowadays, it seems that we can find a way to kind of move around the subject just to find the information that, well, find the terms that make it seem like a lighter punch. When in reality, statistics, like once again, from government sources say, well, how many people think are attacked on the street, or well, they are insulted in the street just for the color of their skin in Mexico? This was a survey made in 2010 by La Conapred and UNAM, and 54.8% said that they would actually be attacked. And this is surprising numbers because it just shows the reality of people in the streets and how we just look at other races as something lower than our own. So that is one of the main problems with the economical and racial situation here in Mexico.
Yeah, definitely. Like it really hasn't changed from way back in the way back in the day. Like it's still really deep rooted. If anything, it started to wash down a little bit. Like we don't straight up enslave people, but it's still there. Like it still harms our community and this hellhole of a country. And I really hope there is some way to fix this. You previously mentioned some insults directed to some people. If you don't mind, like if you have them anywhere, could you give us an example of some of these insults?
Well, there's many people who commented on the survey, but some of the things that we can find, especially just by living in the country, right? We can notice that there are certain phrases that are used, like "te ves muy prieta," which would basically be attacking the fact that one is looking browner or too brown in the literal sense. There's other things like frijolero, which is kind of a mix between if you're a Mexican or well, a foreigner. But usually, it's also a term used here in Mexico where we attack people as beaners because they basically like beans and that's all they can consume. So there's many phrases that ultimately end up referring back to this racism. I don't know if you've heard of any terms yourself, Huerta.
And well, no, not specific terms because, well, not at me at least, but it's just really scary seeing how all this common language is just so deep rooted into racism and the history of this country. Like previously, you will get an insult called salta para atrás, which means a step back. It's
Hmm.
because you were a descendant of a black person and indigenous people. That was an insult given to well, all those descendants by Spaniards who had that mentality of pure white skin and just being closer to God. And this is still being used in today's age. Maybe not that often, but as long as you go to certain zones of the city, you can definitely start to hear that way more usual.
Yes, I completely agree. And well, before we close up this first section, before our sponsor for today, well, I'd just like to throw in some quick numbers. So, for example, the actual population in Mexico in 2018 who is in a situation of poverty is 41.9% of the population. These are statistics from the Coneval, which is once again a government source. In extreme poverty, it's 7.4%. Vulnerable by the amount of income, it's 6.9%. And I mean, people who actually lack the things necessary to survive socially and to, well, basically the basic needs. It's 29.3%. And I mean, the population that isn't poor and isn't vulnerable is only 21.9%. So only the minority of our society in Mexico is actually not affected by this. But we are the, well, this certain group is the one that is establishing, in a way, this racism towards these people. And, well, not only the group itself, but the government and the president and the policies that are taken. So yeah, if you would like to close up before our sponsor.
Yeah, well, basically, I think you summed it up really well right there. It's just not on the language we use, it's also the people who are governing this whole country. It's just simply as if they wanted to create an even bigger divide, a divide that only can be healed by acknowledging this kind of racism and classism in this country.
Yes, yes, indeed. And so, continuing on to our sponsor for today, Grammarly, which, I mean, I suppose we all know what Grammarly is, but Grammarly is an app that helps you with your grammar. It is perfect for essays and homework. Just text Grammarly to 500 500. And once again, thank you for Grammarly for sponsoring today's episode. We wouldn't be able to do it without you. So now that we are closing in at the end of today's episode, I would like just to kind of pinpoint the main points of today. Well, we saw some statistics. We talked a bit about well, certain terms and the way they are used on, well, as references to certain things, the historical background of this. So, in general, I would like to say that I think language is very important. I think changing the term classism, well, changing the term racism towards classism, definitely has an impact, but it's also greater than that. You know, it's ultimately the policies, the government, and at a certain degree, the opportunities that are given to them by by the policies put in place. But society also has to learn to accept these other groups and these minorities, and ultimately we're all people. And in a time where we should be progressing, I think that it's important to start looking at these terms and questioning if it's actually an actual representation of our country.
Yeah, I think you sum it up pretty nicely there. It's just like the language we use really harms other people. As the saying goes, stick and stones may break my bones, but words break my spirit. That's not the actual quote, but I thought it sounded nice. So it's more about the words that we say, like if they really hurt people to a level that they may impair their economic life.
Yes. And if anybody suffers from racial discrimination, well, there are other ways to contact. You can contact many services. And yeah, well, thank you for tuning in today's episode of the Crickcast. We'll have more soon. The next episode, if you would like to preview it, Huerta.
Well, if you're interested in our podcast and are just looking forward to a brand new episode, the next one won't have a 1 year hiatus. It's actually coming out at the same time, episode 3, GMOs and how they can solve the food crisis. See you soon.
Amazing. See you soon, guys. Thank you for tuning in.